July 7th, 2017. Kansas City International Airport. FDX632 is prepared to depart for Memphis.
Flying ground FDX632 Heavy, ready to taxi with information Tango, and requesting Alpha 1 to runway 19 right available.
FDX632 Heavy, roger. Runway 19 right, or taxi to 19 right, the Bravo, then down to Alpha 3, and then you'll have to back taxi to tower.
Okay, Bravo, then down to Alpha 3, and then back taxi from FDX632 Heavy.
At this point, a conversation occurs between the crew of FDX632. They discuss if they're indeed able to backtaxi in the DC-10 and make a 180-degree turn with the 150-foot wide runway. They discuss whether or not they can accept an intersection departure from Alpha 3. They discuss just how much distance is remaining on runway 19 right with an Alpha 3 departure. They're unable to find this information via the charts or the onboard computers, so they decide to count the runway edge lights, which are 200 feet apart, and then subtract that total from the total length.
Hey, ground from FDX632, we can actually take the runway on Alpha 3 and go from there, and we can push if you'd like.
FDX632 Heavy, affirmative, contact tower. Just let them know.
Thanks, have a good day.
FDX632 Heavy, International.
FDX632 Heavy with you, sir, and we can actually take off from Alpha 3 intersection if you feel here.
FDX632 Heavy, International, runway 19 right at Alpha 3, turn left, heading 170, clear for takeoff.
Clear for takeoff, runway 19 right, left, heading 170, FDX632 Heavy.
FDX632's main gear leave the ground with approximately 300 feet remaining on the runway. Here's a view from the security camera mounted on the fire station. You can see that at the point when the main gear leaves the ground, FedEx is approaching Alpha 11. We calculated that he became airborne with approximately 300 feet of runway remaining. Here is where FedEx actually left the ground. While FedEx departed safely, there was very little room for error. If a minor glitch, a miscalculation, anything unusual would have happened, the outcome might have been very different. When something like this occurs, you have to ask yourself, how can we keep this from happening again? Many factors were involved in this process, many links in the chain. Some of the links we had no control over, such as weather. It was a warm summer day, winds 250 at 4, nearly calm. But some things we can evaluate, things we might do differently, ways we might be able to change this outcome. First, let's look at the decision to shut down Alpha 1. Work was being done on taxiway Alpha, and Alpha 1 was the desired access point for vehicles. During the negotiations with airport personnel, we discussed two options. The first option was leaving Alpha 1 open and having Airport 210 call for approval on each crossing vehicle. The second option, and the one that we selected, was to close the taxiway with the ability to reopen it for short periods as needed, such as in the case of FDX632. The decision was made due to the proposed number of construction vehicles and in an effort to avoid any undue frequency congestion. If we had went the other direction, we could have avoided the situation. The next step was communicating this information to the workforce. On March 1st, a memorandum was sent out to the workforce, highlighting the plan and discussing the impact of the outage. The briefing included lineup and wait, recall procedures for Alpha 1, and phraseology for Alpha 1 departures, including distance remaining. On June 20th, another memo was released to the workforce, extending the shutdown through July. This also included the Alpha 1 recall option. Shortly after the incident involving FDX632, a third briefing was put together highlighting the previously covered information, along with more specific guidance on sharing data with the pilots via the ATIS broadcast. Following this briefing, an informal audit was conducted, and the previously addressed behavior had not changed. There were some controllers still unaware of the recall option for Alpha 1. In the same audit, the distance remaining from an Alpha 3 intersection departure was not included in the ATIS broadcast as had been mandated. We need to ask ourselves, how do we effectively communicate operational information to the floor? Is the method of dissemination flawed? If so, where is the breakdown and how do we correct this? Communicating information to the workforce is a critical part of our operation, and this issue has to be fixed. Another issue is the pilot's accessibility to the distance remaining from an Alpha 3 departure. The obvious choice would be to ask the controller, which was not done in this instance. In this case, the FedEx pilot counted the runway edge lights. Clearly not the best, most accurate source for data this critical, especially when combined with something that we discovered during our discussions with FedEx. We discovered that they have a company policy for energy efficiency that mandates reduced flap settings and decreased throttle settings on all of their airplanes. FedEx has auto throttles that they use during takeoff, and all the factors are pre-programmed into the flight computer. In this case, they were using an estimated figure for the distance remaining. These internal FedEx procedures make usable runway length even more important. Additionally, FedEx provided one more item during this review, and that was the radius required for a DC-10 to make a 180-degree turn. Apparently, it's 140 feet. With our runways 150 feet wide, that doesn't leave much room for error. When we reviewed the recordings, you can hear FedEx requesting Alpha 1. The pilot was then given Alpha 3 with an option to backtaxi. A more appropriate response might have been to give the FedEx options, including how much of an additional delay would be incurred waiting for Alpha 1 to be cleared. We can't change what happened with FDX632, but we can learn from the situation. We can be safer. We can do better. We can improve our communications. Do you have any suggestions? No one knows the operation better than the controllers. How do we keep this from happening again? What do you think?